Welcome to the Chase Merrell podcast. I am your host, Chase Merrell, and we are all about helping people get freed up from what's holding them back so they can build up who they were made to be. If you want to help us continue to make an impact with this podcast week in and week out, consider joining our new Patreon community. For as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can be a part of helping us get the message and mission of the podcast out to more people more effectively. This is a way that we can come together as a community, and you'll get access to behind the scenes stuff, additional resources and content, and so much more for just as little as $5 a month. You can head over to chasemerrill.com and click Patreon to jump in and get started. Now let's jump into today's conversation. Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is episode 51.
Yeah.
And we have one more to go before this project, the 52 project, is complete. Mm-hmm. And you have been on this podcast. I said, welcome back. You were episode 2, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Almost a year ago.
Yeah.
You had Joy, our youngest, with you during that podcast, and it was a great podcast. Joy was a star as well. You said some incredible things, but part of me also felt like, man, I would love to be able to have another one of these with you based on the fact that this whole project was about people who made an impact on my life. And you are the biggest, I mean, obviously the biggest, continue to be favorite human being in the world. And that has only grown more this year since that episode till now. And so, thought about like, man, how do I really kind of want to wrap this thing up? As we round this thing out, and there's so many people that could be a part of this 52 was really hard to whittle down, and man, people could have been interchanged in some of those. Obviously not everybody in my life who's made a massive impact was able to either schedule, limited it, or just it just didn't work out. So for those that are like, I thought I made an impact on Chase's life, why didn't I get an invite? You could have, okay, just so you know, you're none of you but just knew this was the right way to go to wrap this thing kind of as we come to the close to the last episode. So welcome back. Cannot wait to have a conversation with you today and really even unpack a little bit of this last year, the journey between the two of us, your life individually, my life individually. Yeah. So how you feeling?
Great.
Yeah.
Just so glad to be here without a child. Just the place that we were at in January. It was a very different morning coming into this by the grace of God.
It was.
Right?
Right.
We're at a different place. We're different people, and we're not fully different people, but there's been significant change who we were 48 weeks ago to who we are today. Yeah,
big time. And part of why, for people that are listening that have been part of the journey of the podcast to this point, or they just know us or you at some level, would you say like, you mentioned 48 weeks. Let's just roll with that number since we have the
49.
podcast, whatever that is.
Our math game is so strong.
We are such a strong math couple, honestly. It's such a strong suit for us. We are there. Would you say it could be the most transformative span of 4 weeks or 48 weeks in your life? When you think about what was transformed and grown in you over a period of time like that. Or would it be up there? What would you say?
Yeah, I would say I haven't really thought through compared to other seasons. Overall, yes, there would be a couple other seasons where there would have been some major shifts and changes. But I think as you look at like one collective year, what has happened and grown and changed, like deep things, not just surface things.
Yeah.
This would probably be, if not the most, or the second most. If there's something else that competes with that.
Yeah. And, somebody that's close to you on the day to day, I would agree with that. I would agree. I would say even in the span of time I've known you, which is a long time, we're looking at like, what, 18 years, 17 years that we've known each other. Got to be close to that.
2014.
No.
That's 2004. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like
we were married in 2012.
We were married for 2 years at that point.
Was it 2004?
Yeah.
That'll be 20 years.
This upcoming year. Oh my gosh. It's a long time.
Because we've known each other a while.
Yeah, so in that span of time, obviously, over the last 11 years of being married, but I would say this, what I've watched happen in you in the last 48 weeks is the most transformation in a period of time since I've known you and been married to you, for sure. And I honestly probably would say a similar thing about me based on where I was a year ago to now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, where you were last December, mid-December, is night and day to where you are now.
Yeah.
In certain areas.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think part of, like, as people are listening, like, just to encourage them right out of the gate, what we're saying, what we're talking about is the way that ultimately Jesus has been involved in our lives individually and together over this last year as the primary source of where that transformation is coming from and possible from, but lots of other factors with that. But that being that as you look at your life and you think about where you're at and where you kind of wish you were, or to think about this next year in front of you, I'm talking to the people listening, 2024, and to think like, here two people that are so much growth transformation still to happen, needs to happen. But to honestly be able to sit here and go, over this last year, we both grew tremendously. And to think about where we were and where we are now, like, to just encourage people to go, like, what's possible for you in your life in this next year. If you're just not in a good place, or in the place you wish you were in, don't lose hope and be encouraged. Like, it's possible to have an insane amount of growth in your life in all kinds of areas within a calendar year. So to not underestimate, like, what could happen in the next season in front of you, 2024, etc. We are really sitting here as a byproduct, I think, of some of that, and excited to continue, to grow. For those that, like, don't know as much about you or whatever in this season, like, how would you share part of that journey? Like, what has grown when you think about that?
Yeah. I would say back to the beginning of the year. I don't remember exactly when, but late winter, early spring.
Yeah.
Like, we just kept hitting these places of, like, there's major conflict, but, like, minor conflict on the daily, just rhythms, things that what was coming out of me consistently.
And when you say we, you're talking about you and I.
You and I.
Yeah, I have some clarifying.
Sorry. That we recognized the journey, like, the Lord had been doing things and transforming, but, like, there's still, like, these walls and these places where, like, we just felt stuck in the same place, or I was stuck in a place, or you, right? Like, these different places that you can, like, I really feel like you need to continue pursuing counseling and, like, having somebody outside of me that is a trusted voice that's going to point you to Jesus, that you can really process through more with, to see what the Lord can continue to do with you, or if there's something, like, what support you can get for where you're at. And so,
can I pause there for a second?
Yeah.
I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but I just want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because that was, I don't know, I didn't know how to do that. I think that was very difficult for me, based on, like, thinking about, and I want to hear how you felt as I brought that, because I'm sure there's couples out there that maybe have some of this in their own marriage, and they're wondering, like, if I were to tell my spouse, hey, I think we need to take steps together, maybe individually or together or both, to pursue additional help outside of us, that there could be a lot of hurt in that, or misunderstanding, or offense, or all of that. So like, I mean, for me, that was extremely difficult, because I wasn't in a place where I was like, I want to hurt you and I want to make you feel bad, or I was like, my personality obviously is like, it terrifies me to do that to anybody, but I recognized we really had hit a point of, like, I don't feel like I can help us in this enough by myself.
Yeah.
And we trust the Lord. Obviously, He's working through us, and He's been leading and guiding in a lot of these. But, like, it feels like there's got to be some other help we can step into that doesn't, like, obliterate our trust or love for each other. How did you receive that initially when it came to, like, that? Hey,
I don't think it was like, oh, I think that's the best thing that I could do, and I totally receive everything you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
think there was probably hurt and bitterness and pride that was in the initial reactions and responses. But as we continued on that journey and conversation, like the Lord began softening my heart, and like I process so differently than you process. And so for me, so much is time.
What would you say to the person, the spouse that's maybe in both seats, the one that's like, I don't know, I feel like I need to bring something like this up, but I'm afraid or nervous or whatever. How would you encourage them? And then how would you encourage the person receiving that kind of encouragement?
I think on both sides, this idea that it impacts both sides, like the hope for both parties, like you don't know what's on the other end of that.
Yeah.
Like there's hope on the other end in so many different ways. Like it might not be what you expect and anticipate. So the one encouraging, like, hey, what if we pursued, presenting, because you don't know what's on the other end for that person and you. And so the encouragement of like, do it, like point people to other people that are godly, that are wise, that have great counsel, that have great training and education in how to lead and guide other people, because there's so much more available, so much more potential. There's so much more support. And so be careful, be cautious, be wise in like how it's communicated, but do it.
Yeah.
And don't give up, and be kind and gracious, but like keep pursuing. And then on the receiving side of things, like, what's it going to hurt by trying?
Yeah.
Right. Like give it a couple months, give it 3 months and go like, are you worse off? Are you really worse off? Or are you really stagnant in exactly where you were by pursuing counsel or whatever, not just professionally counseling, but extra support, another wise friend, people that are intentionally in your life, accountability that gives another perspective than the person in that immediate relationship, that is just another wise, trusted voice.
Yeah.
Like, give it time, let the journey and the process happen, and see and walk open-handed in it. And like, you don't know what can happen on the other side.
Yeah. And I would
say, I had no clue what could happen on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, neither of us did,
no.
You know, and I recognized part of what I knew had to be with my encouragement in that was like this undeniable, like I'm committed to you.
Yeah.
Like emphasis along that, right? Hey, I feel like I can't do enough to help us on this right now, but I'm not walking out on this situation. I'm with you. And why I'm bringing this up isn't because like, I just want you to fix yourself or whatever. So just get, it's like, I want us to be healthier and enjoy more life together in a way that I think God's got us designed, how God has designed for us. And so, but I think that piece for people that are thinking about how do I do, I mean, like, you know, you just said it perfectly, like do it, how you careful, but like, but also if you're in that spot, whether you're the husband or wife here, like for your spouse to know, no matter what, I'm with you, I'm in this with you, I'm not going anywhere. And it's because I want us to be connected more. Like that's got to be reinforced. I feel like a lot, even if you say it once. And I think that was a piece that I think
that's your biggest, like, my ultimate goal is greater connection with you.
Yeah.
My ultimate goal is greater connection with you. And like for me, I'm like, yeah, I know, I heard you say that. But then it helps continually reaffirm that. And so the feelings of self-doubt I have, or the feelings of insecurity, I can actually go back to, well, he's continually saying this. And so I have a trust and reassurance in that. And I feel that from him.
Yeah.
Is significant.
Yeah. Because I mean, the enemy will always try to communicate that opposite message,
Absolutely.
which is he doesn't want to be connected.
Yep.
Or she doesn't want to be connected. That she wants, you know, there'd be more space, or she's rejecting you, he's rejecting you, right? So like that idea of just, but however you can reinforce that's really, really important along the journey. Okay. So thanks for that quick little sidebar. I think that could be people that are like, oh my gosh, how do we navigate that? So that process kind of restarted in, you know, early in the year.
Yeah. Probably March.
So talk a little bit more about that. And
started pursuing a counselor that I had been with for at least a year and a half during COVID time.
Yeah.
And started going on a journey with her and a weekly meeting, and it was good. And like, oh man, I mean, she is so, she's incredible. She's so life-giving and encouraging and challenging. And so like, it was such a, just like refreshing. And there were times where I'm like, I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to take this time, or I don't want to find childcare, or I don't want to have my 3 kids watching TV and like try to manage them while I'm doing counseling at the kitchen table. This is just, walking into it feelings. And then every time I'd leave going, praise God. Like, I'm so thankful I had that. Yep. I'm so thankful I'm walking away challenged a little bit, maybe with some action steps I can walk in, or just I'm encouraged. I have a safe place. Yeah. Right? A safe place. I can talk and process, and it be a safe place. Nobody's going to judge me. Nobody's going to critique me. It's just going to be, okay, here's a place for you to do that. And so I think just having that place outside of a spouse relationship or what other, depending on your stage and season of life, that close relationship, those safe places are vital.
Yeah.
And so went on that journey for months, and then reached a point in early August where she recommended doctor that she had worked under, doctor, counselor, chaplain.
Yeah.
He's got a couple doctors. He's awesome. That she had worked with or learned under, excuse me. And she's like, he's really hard to get into, but like, let me see if I can get you in to see him like even once. And got into him and was thinking like, oh, I'll see him like once or twice. And it really has been about 2 times a month since August that I've gotten to meet with Dr. Tilley. And like, my change from August to now has been significant.
Yep.
Significant.
Massive.
Like, game changing in my life.
And that you had been doing, but January to August, February to August was so much of, I think, really tilling the ground and re-engaging in that openness to God. Yep. God, what are you wanting to do in me in a way that is transforming more? And then, but there was something from August till now that has just been an exponential kind of growth experience from what was to what is.
And it's been so many layers, right? It hasn't been one thing, where it's been the layers of I walked in for ADHD testing, and just as I walked through with Casey, my counselor, like all these different things, she's like, let's try that route. Let's see if that's a potential for you, just as what you've been walking through, struggling with, dealing with. So walked in, took that test, and was like, you're not there, which our journey, your journey, right, has been like, I'm like, I don't struggle with ADHD.
Right.
Like, as we've really walked this out.
Right.
So it was just like, I don't, like, what? Okay. Like, all right. Like, let's just try. Let's see. And then that door, though, was the door that the Lord is like, okay, let's take you on this journey.
Yeah.
And so really fully recognized early on in the year, as I pursued Casey initially, I had pursued just Kaiser doctors before.
Right.
Like, recognizing like, oh, I really do struggle with anxiety. I was like, I'm anxious here, I'm anxious there. This is anxious. Like, oh no, like this is reoccurring, consistent.
Yeah.
And so recognizing and owning that, and so walking that journey. But then come really end of August, with Dr. Tilley, that like recognition of the anxiety world, he pointed me to like a homeopathic supplement that I began taking. And then I also reached out to a nutritionist that we've been working with for Bo for his health stuff. Did some testing with her, and she got me on a regimen of supplements to just help support my body as I've been pregnant or nursing for the past
marriage.
8 years plus 9 months, right? However long, like, math again. Almost 9 years. And so my body's just depleted. So just getting my body back to a place of like beginning to rebuild it with different supplements. And so this combination of supplements, homeopathic medicine, and then begin doing a deeper work with Dr. Tilly, with somebody who is so highly educated and trained that I haven't gotten the opportunity to really do that like deep work with,
right,
and be taught. Like some of it's teaching, some of it's like been like deep transformation work. Crazy. And then like for me, right, the multi-layers, as I have walked with the Lord, and the Lord's been part of this in my relationship with Jesus, but this growth of in my intentionality with the Lord, there has been this for years, right? But there's been a different significant change, I would even say since spring, in my pursuit of Jesus and my relationship with him, that has been growing differently. And that's everything, right? That's the source of everything. Like I can't get through any of this without recognizing like that it really is, that's the center of it all, everything. And then I started, for me, like I am such a holistic health person. I love fitness, but how I had been operating in my fitness world, circumstantially, seasonally, was at home mainly, or at a box gym that was just not cutting it for me when I got to be in there. And so just over 2 months ago, you really helped really push me in the positive to go like, hey, let's make this happen for you. Like you need this. You need something more because of how you're wired, what your experiences with fitness have been. So started CrossFit for the first time.
Yeah. And that was like
early October.
Yeah, it was not that long ago.
No.
I think another point to just say to spouses in marriages out there, I had heard this longing and this frustration for a long period of time from you around this desire, which was, you've experienced in your past just an incredible like health and fitness and workout community that has been difficult to find anything close to here compared to where you experienced it before, in Modesto and around different places with Get Fit. Shout out Jonathan and Tara Crenshaw and that whole world.
The best.
And so, it's been since we've been here, it hasn't been the same thing you haven't found. So I've heard that, but then, it's something clicked for me as I started to really watch you take these steps I hadn't seen you take or be willing maybe to take before.
Yeah.
Something opened my eyes to go, hey, like she's been stepping into some of these things more now. You need to also figure out ways to come alongside her and hear some of these desires and just figure out how to make them happen if it's possible. And so, that was part of the like, hey, what's the closest thing we could find to that? Maybe. And even if it's going to cost and be a sacrifice, that's something I hear you saying, man, I need this. I want this to bring joy and health and fulfillment in that way. And so I think for a while it was just like, why can't we figure it out? Why can't you figure it out here or at this place?
Yeah.
And it was finally like, man, she's putting in the work. You need to make this sacrifice as a family to make this work. And so anyway, that's part of that journey. I think there's things even for people to go, what frustration or desire has your spouse been communicating, even if it's been subliminally, not explicitly, and you can recognize that maybe you've just tuned out, that it might be time to engage and go, man, maybe this isn't just a complaint, maybe this is an opportunity for me to love and serve them by figuring out how to make something like this happen. So speaking of that, I hadn't done that well, and I had stepped into that this last season to help make that happen, and that has been a part. You've found something even there. Would you say that's been like, maybe not totally what you looked for, but more in that direction?
Yeah, for sure. Having a community of people where you can actually talk to a human being instead of like walk around and like have people with their headphones in. And like I have personal training clients, and I love that. And yet that's still different than walking into like a community.
Right.
Where people at a gym.
You're also working out.
Yes.
Right. And
like growing. I'm being pushed and I'm being challenged.
Right.
And so that really has been, and I love the physical challenge, like for my mind, for my, like who I am, right? Like my mental health it only increases when I am being pushed physically hard. So that's been a great joy, but like, so it's so many layers of things. It's not been one area. It's been so many layers of like, man, there's been growth and transformation because like Jesus has done like the deeper things I'm giving him space. Like, let's go uproot and do the hard and uncomfortable work that is going to have fruit come out differently.
Would you? Yes. That was so beautifully said. I cannot reiterate that enough. There's so many different factors to this, and it's important people to hear that and really know there isn't like this magic bullet, magic pill, one thing, just counseling, just physical fitness, just a devotion, whatever, right? Like it's a multi-layer of surrendering all of your life to the Lord to let him impact every area. Now, would you like, I'm thinking about putting more even handlebars on for people listening and been maybe even a part of this journey, like the recognition of like, I actually am more anxious than I could acknowledge before. And some of those things. How can you give us a picture of like, what did that actually look like? What did the unhealthy, I'm asking you to be kind of vulnerable for a moment. And there's a reason why I'm going to go, I have a place I'm going. And so, you don't have to say anything in that world, but, what did that unhealthy look like for people that are listening to go, what are we really, what are they talking about? Like what got healthier? What are they experiencing now that was so shifted from where, because I think a lot of people probably have some similar responses or things that they've wrestled with that are probably there, whether they can acknowledge it or not, or their spouse can acknowledge it or not. Like, could you give us the pre and the post pictures of like kind of what, maybe an example of what some of that would have looked like how Jesus has transformed that?
Yeah, I would say for me, most mornings, I wake up and feel like I have to do all these things that I feel like I need to do. I feel like I need to do everything within the first hour of the day. I feel the weight of it all. I feel that. And so what that produces in me, right? My mind. And then recognizing like I do have some symptoms and tendencies of ADHD. And so you couple like the anxiety with the like ADHD world, where my brain doesn't necessarily fire perfectly and be able to think fully straightforward. And that over layering in the mornings where like I feel like I so many times got paralyzed, like for example getting multiple lunches ready in the kitchen and 5 breakfasts at the same time, where doing those tasks, then feeling all the things, like I almost get paralyzed and panicky choosing items to put in a lunch or trying to get something from a dish to a plate. And then what that causes in me, what was coming out of me was harshness, anger, responses towards everyone around me. And then like internally, right, there's that like feeling of a failure, I'm not good enough, right, these lies. But then so many mornings in that like the lightheaded, dizzy, panic attack feeling of work, kids, doing that all in the mornings often, and then often in the evening again, as a summer's different, right? It just depends on the circumstance and season, but like trying when everyone has all their energy coming together, and trying to do meals and tasks and multiple different people talking to me, but like
and managing all of their emotions to a degree too, right? Like you're whether someone's cranky from waking up weird or right. I realize that's also moms and dads, but a lot of moms probably understand more that world of you're doing all those practicals, and then there's just the intangibles of the emotional relational dynamics of children and kids and spouse, as well.
Yeah, but for me, I would say most of my anxiety was producing in my anxiousness produced from me anger and harshness coming out of me.
Yeah, I think that snowball that would happen of anxiousness, anxiety, that would lead to some form of like a coping with that by maybe a shortness with others or a harshness, and then you mentioned how like that, then internally, that's what's coming on the external, but the internal is really creating like that, like regret or self-loathing of like, I'm a failure. Why do I do that? And then it almost just like reproduces itself as the snowball gets bigger until the circumstances can be controlled, maybe more, or they're away, like the kids are finally at school, or the the volume has finally come down, and so yeah. But thank you for sharing pieces of that. I think one of the things I want to acknowledge across this journey I've watched you walk individually, and not just because I think what I'm going to pivot into just for a moment before wrapping up this kind of segment here is to talk about what I'm really seeing now coming out of you in those moments, but to acknowledge even up to this season where there's been so much growth, you always, and I can genuinely say always, you always found yourself back at the feet of Jesus and allowed the Holy Spirit to speak to you and produce repentance. When something came out of you that was maybe not life-giving or hurtful or not glorifying to the Lord, whatever, you and then period, different times, at times lengths of what that looked like, but like just acknowledge that the journey of Jesus in people's lives, it is a process and journey, and it could be years, but I have been so inspired and challenged by you over the years that even when moments like that happen, your ability to bring it to the Lord and listen to him convict or correct or rebuke and then encourage and then communicate that at some point, a text, a call, hey, I'm sorry for the way I responded or whatever, has just been it's been so powerful. And I think that is so difficult to do in and of itself. And I think that could be one of the biggest keys to a healthy relationship is both spouses' ability to allow the Holy Spirit to do the work in them, speak to their hearts when they need it to happen. And so that their spouse isn't always the Holy Spirit. It can't be, but to have the humility to go, I really didn't do that right. And even if it takes me a day or whatever, a week, to come back and acknowledge that you've done that in so many moments that I go, wow, like, it's not like you just turned the Jesus button on this year. Like, Jesus has been working in you for a long time. Yeah. But this has just been a significant shift more recently. So thanks for sharing. Anything else in that space you would just say, as you've been walking through it, if for somebody that you, again, listening and they're like, man, that's me. Everything she just said or something that she just said about that, oh my gosh, it feels like somebody's reading my mail. I resonate. How would you encourage them? What would you say to them? Maybe if they're in the middle of that right now.
Man, there's hope. It doesn't always have to be this way.
Yeah.
And you are not broken. You are not less than. Gosh, you're still just as valuable. You're still just as incredible in the way that you are made in the image of God. In the midst of all the feelings, in the midst of how your mind is processing in your heart, like, and there's hope.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to pursue the things, like that journey from like where you are to what is, to the growth, to some change, to some feelings and alleviation. It doesn't look the same for everybody. Like, as I've talked to so many people this year, like, it looks so different for so many different people. And that journey to get to the next step, like not the destination, but like the next step, is not comfortable necessarily, but the things that are comfortable for us don't really produce change in us and don't transform. And you're not alone. Like, but there are people that want to walk with you in it, and be with you in it, and are equipped Like there are people that are so equipped.
Yeah.
And it is worth pursuing support.
Yeah. Big time.
And that support looks different, right?
Yeah.
That's not a one size fits all. No. That is so varied and different.
Yeah. Yeah. Great encouragement. Yeah. And to the person that's maybe in the other position, if you will, you know, and that doesn't negate that they both people, again, the person that you choose to marry is the person that God has for you.
Yeah.
And so in that, marriage is such a beautiful, refining environment for both people. There's not one, like, and so for me, like, just acknowledging, like, how much the Lord along this journey for what he's been doing in you has been such a part of the things that he's been doing and wants to do in me. And it's not like this, okay, cool, God, take care of Holly so we could have a better marriage, right? It's like, all right, God,
yeah,
I definitely feel like I don't know what else to do here, but I need more help, and keep working on me along the way, because I am a broken, you know, you just said you're not broken, but I'm just saying, I gave it to the
yes.
Right. I'm in a work in progress too. But the thing I want to encourage people with too, before moving into this next point, is just you mentioned the word hope. I had come to a point as we wrapped up our 10-year anniversary, which was October 2022, and, you know, right kind of before some of the crazy of the last year began, I had really just begun to think, this world of what I've experienced in our relationship coming out of Holly in moments like this and stuff, it's just not, there's no possibility of it changing.
Yeah.
It's going to be like this. And I have to stop wishing it would change, or I have to stop praying it would change and believing it could. And I just need to get over that and move past that's never going to happen. And this is just going to be part of it. And we're just going to have to deal with this. And what I saw happen miraculously in this last year was this reality, like, wait a minute, like, God, there's nothing outside of the bounds of what God can do in a person and in a relationship, period. And I'm experiencing, and I would really say, like, you know, over the last, since August till now, what's that, 4 months or so, like, the reality is it's still happening. It's like, it wasn't just the conference weekend and it lasted a week or two and man, look at now we're back. It's like, it's changed. It's actually changed. And I'm going, I mean, man, God, you really are capable of doing a deep work in someone's life in a way that, like, just to encourage somebody, like, don't lose hope. Don't stop praying, even for your spouse or for that child or for that, you know, parent dynamic and relationship or whatever, that there's something that continuing to trust the Lord with and pray and show up and love and grow yourself in, you have to know there is something on the other side that I just didn't actually think it was there until I got to experience it the way I have in this last season. And then the other piece to this was, and you mentioned you just preached this recently at our church and freaking killed it, by the way. Gosh, it just was so cool. Anytime I get to hear you preach, it's like I'm sitting on usually that front row, and I have this picture. I shared this with you when this last time you preached, but just this picture of, like, my little 8th grade, 9th grade self that dreamed about, really, actually, you were the first person because of the way that all worked out, ironically, but about a wife that loved the Lord and was able to lead people in what that looked like, whether it was preaching or worship or teaching or whatever, and to just sit there again on Sunday and be like, man, God, look at, like, you brought me such a partner in this who's, like, challenging me to grow in you, and it was awesome. You said something around part of what has been a massive factor in our transformation together, and your transformation and my transformation individually, is how we've prayed together this year.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, and maybe talk about, like, I mean, I have thoughts, but what's your perspective? Because when I think about, I mean, we're pastors, been Christians since we were, you know, really, really Christians or whatever. I gave my life for real to Jesus at like 13, although I was raised in church. Prayer's not foreign to us. You gave your life even younger and all that, Christian home. we know pray, we talked about pray, but like for whatever reason, for 10 years of marriage, to pray together every day was such a weird hurdle.
Yeah.
And something really since January 2023 till now, something shifted and we have done more of that. But will you talk a little bit about that journey and communicate what kind of you communicated even in your sermon?
Oh yeah, I'll have to think back to the sermon part.
Well, no, just more that you mentioned this in your sermon.
Oh
about,
yeah,
like
just the transforming effect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's always been something that has been so awkward or uncomfortable or just circumstances weren't right. Like for years, I went to bed way earlier than you. Right. So like sleep schedules, like
some real practical things maybe it's impacted that.
Yes. So like,
and yet let me acknowledge, right, as I'm sitting here now, I would have used that as an excuse.
Yes.
That would have felt justified.
Yes.
But the reality is,
it's not.
There could have been plenty of other moments in the day or evening when we were, again, even pre-kids, all that stuff. We could have been intentional about coming together to pray at least once a day, right? But that was like we're not going to bed together, so
right.
Keep going.
I don't really fully recall the start of it. I remember you pursuing, going like, hey, I want to start praying together more. And then I also remember reading this book both of us had read. I don't remember if it was EHS or if it was Tim Keller's prayer book. Was it Tim Keller's prayer book?
It could have been. Because it kickstarted in January when our church did a 21 days of fasting and prayer through a cool book / devotional called Starving, 21 Days of Something with Jesus. And that was the thought, I think, was like, okay, I know praying together is going to be valuable.
Right.
I want to just try for 21 days. Could we pray together every night for 21 days straight? Like that seems so easy, small, and elementary, but man, we have not done that probably. Yep. Could we do it? Let's try. That was kind of like, let's do this together. Yeah. That's what started it. But so we did that, and we went to bed more together. That was a big practical thing too. Yeah. But that's what kickstarted it. But how? Maybe pause. What was difficult? What was awkward for you?
What was awkward for me
about praying?
Yeah, is I think at the beginning of like our friendship relationship, there was so much like depth spiritually. Yeah. As we grew, and then there has been, I think, so much from me, insecurity. Like, I mean, like real honestly, right? Like, right. There has been in our relationship like insecurity and feeling not as significant as like you really have held, which is great, like the pastor leader role, but there's been insecurities in me. And so as it comes to praying, there's just been like this, like from both of us though, an awkwardness, like, is she judging me? Is he judging me? Am I praying right? Like we could pray and lead in the church. Yeah, no problem. Like with 100 people. Right, totally. More than 100 people. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't uncomfortability like where I know some people that would be part of their wrestling. It's like I know how to pray, and that's a very legitimate thing that would pause somebody or make it a hindrance. That wasn't ours. We prayed all the time. It was the fact that it was with each other. Yeah. And for me to acknowledge part of that, like the awkwardness was, I over a period of time I recognized that you had been feeling or were in some form of feeling insecure around when we prayed together, and I didn't want to make you feel like that. Yep. And so there was times where I was like, I've heard her, or I can sense. I'm very high sense, high feel guy. Yes. So I was like, she's not vibing on this. I don't want to make her feel spiritually inferior. Yeah. And so I'm not gonna pray because I don't want to make her feel like that and cause even more of a divide. So that was there. And then the other piece of it was like, I think that there was it just felt like if you didn't communicate like a real desire to, right, I always kind of just took that as my nonverbal communication EQ, right, which isn't I would say that's not right. I shouldn't have made assumptions based on, and then I would think about, oh, she really knows me and knows this day, and she knows I didn't spend time with the Lord today based upon probably our schedule or whatever, like, and she knows the way I talked to her, and we got in this thing around dinner, and we haven't really like resolved that necessarily. So hey, let's pray together before we fall asleep. Will feel so disingenuous. Yeah. And I don't want her to. I mean, so all of those were factors. I'm sure there's others that contributed. I think for me to be like, we don't need to pray. Let's just say, love you, good night. For sure. And then you put your little earplugs in and you're like, oh my gosh. Can we just say how many times like there's been the bedtime like pray or I love you right before we actually like, go to sleep. And oh my gosh, I just have to say this because I feel like I need it. It's like, I could get it off my chest. Where I have said, we say goodnight after a prayer. Mm-hmm. And I always, it's like, it's, amen. We finish, and I say, I love you. And that's it. And usually I say it and you respond like too. But there have been so many times you are so quick after the amen to put your earplugs in that I've said I love you and you don't say it back. And I am like, okay, I love you. And you're like, what? And I'm like, I just said I love you. And I'm just like, it's freaking earplugs. Like just
it's one earplug though.
One freaking earplug. Just wait an extra half of a second so that you can hear me. Somebody's so dumb. But okay. But we started to step into it. Let's just talk about that world.
Yeah.
I mean, I would look at it almost even like any discipline that takes time. Like, right, what does it say? Like the average amount of time to produce like a rhythm and a habit is like 30 days.
Yeah.
I'd say that's probably I'd say somewhere between 20 and 30 days of doing this. We started to experience like a rhythm and a sweet spot where we felt, I think, more comfortable to doing this.
Yeah. And it just got less awkward or less uncomfortable in the togetherness of it.
Yeah.
And then as we've consistently done it, and we haven't done every night, we've done most nights, but like there's been nights where it's just circumstances that are just unique.
Yeah. I would say we have prayed more in this year together than we have in our entire marriage up to this point.
Oh, for sure.
Combined. Would
Absolutely.
You say that? Yeah. Which is crazy, but
absolutely.
That's nuts.
And I mean, now like it's just this, it's a safe place. Like it's, instead of feeling like I have to really care about what you're thinking about what I'm praying, right? Like that emotional, like there's just a different level of emotional health.
Yes.
Where it's like, I'm not worried necessarily. I mean, there's still sometimes I'm like, well, should I really say this? Should I not say this? But then majority of the time it really is this like, man, I'm talking to Jesus.
Yeah.
And there's a unifying and a spiritual protection in our home, and a like at the ultimate, like it is just shifting and pointing my heart back to Jesus. And then the unification and the oneness of us in that sacredness of marriage, like that it's created a greater unifying in our marriage and a greater joy and a greater intimacy because Jesus is becoming more the center of our marriage, and not just the center of our lives, but like our marriage in us together. And so it has not just been great times of prayer throughout the year with the Lord, or things that we're praying for, or people, or our kids, but like it has created and forged a greater unity in our marriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's been transformative.
Yeah.
And so, right, like all these different layers of things and growth the Lord has, but like there is this like, been a growth in Jesus for the two of us, but then a growth in our marriage because of prayer, and then other things on top. Like, and there's plenty of things that come up and tension and conflict.
Yeah.
But there's that like, man, we're so much more in union because of that, like because of Jesus holding us together at a greater level. That's been significant this year.
And I think when I look back on this year, that spiritual intimacy that we've developed together in our marriage with Jesus has become one of my favorite things in life. That I treasure it. Like I treasure it. I look forward to it. I look forward to depositing more into it, investing more, and spending more time in whatever that looks like. I look forward to praying with you now, where before it was such a reticence and a hesitation. It's like, and it's so beautiful as a husband, and I'm sure there's a degree of this as a wife, obviously spouse in general. But when I pray, when I get to hear you talk to Jesus when your head hits the pillow, each night. It gives me as a husband an insight into where your heart's at in the most real sense. Once you get through all of the awkward, uncomfortable, I'm worried about how to pray, what to pray with him listening. And you're just, I think you said, you're talking to Jesus. And when that really clicked and I began to listen and pray it with you, but go, what a window in I'm getting to my wife's heart and soul right now. Even that's 2 minutes. It's a minute and a half to go, man, Lord, I'm connecting to her as she's connecting to you. I mean, it's like how God probably designed it, in that way to go, man, I know now tomorrow morning or tomorrow throughout the day, I could be praying for her in this way because this is what's heavy on her heart. This person's going through this and she's praying about that or whatever. And so that just that spiritual intimacy in our marriage, again, one of those things I didn't know was possible. I thought maybe, but maybe not us. I see other people think they have it, but maybe we won't. And the Lord's just been like, it's possible.
Yeah.
And I would say too, just people listening, because I know there's a varying degree of where spouses are at in that desire, right? Like how many times we've talked to people or we've had conversations where there's a gap. Like I think it's more rare to experience part of what we're starting to experience than it's common in Christian marriages, right? And for the person listening, that's like, I dream of some of that. To continue to take that next step, right? You said it so beautifully earlier. It may not be like you're going to get to the destination immediately, but what does that next step look like? And keep trying to take that with the Lord and see what he can do.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's probably the best part of my year. And there's been some amazing parts of this year of growth and development and transformation, but that's been such a beautiful piece. So, thanks for your patience with me along the journey of those 10 years previously to lead and be consistent in leading. Yeah. It's something that I have really had to grow in a lot. Prayer, counseling, fitness, some supplements and medication, a lot of Jesus. Yep. A lot of community. Yep.
A lot of community.
Gosh, those relationships that we get to have and continue to be a part of are just precious. But all of that's impacted so much for us this year. This being close to the wrap up of this 52 project. Yeah. You and the kids have watched me go on this journey. Yeah. There's been a lot of ups and downs a little bit along the way there too. And sacrifices all around, but you guys have had to make some sacrifices. What, just from a wife's perspective of watching this over the last year, like what has this been like? And just thoughts. I mean, from the people that are like, what's Holly think about any of this stuff that he's been attempting to do?
Yeah. I think I thought at the beginning of the year when you came up with the idea, I was like, man, that sounds cool. And like, it's gonna be awesome for him to just reconnect with people and maybe pursue some like just, these like super influential, like big people, right? Yeah. It was like kind of like maybe that's what's gonna happen. Who knows? That'd be cool. Really neat opportunity for him. And watching the unfolding of not just a podcast, but the journey for you of the journey of growth and the restoration that like the Lord had for you from, as you've talked about, like 2022 being such a challenging personal year for you, watching like the first podcast with Landon where you guys were gone all night and like just trying to figure out like how do we even do this setup tech wise? Like we have an idea, but like how does this happen? Yeah. To each week, like a part of your heart regrowing, healing, like this restoration of joy that began coming like into you and then coming out of you. There's so many pieces of it, right? So just the impact on you and watching like this just really be something that the Lord has used to like restore, breathe life into you, give you a creative outlet and passion and the way you just love people and relationships and connection so much. to be able to have all these connected moments that you wouldn't have had otherwise in this year, right? Like
Yeah.
people that you would not have talked to,
right.
no chance in this year on just a regular
Sure.
year, like without this intentional pursuit of them. And so for you to be able to experience that relational joy, but then to watch this, like the challenges of it, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I feel like I'm hitting a wall on a technology just not working or being an issue, like a camera shutting down, right? Like these like little back end pieces that caused hours and hours and hours of frustration that just created more like, I'm going to learn more and I'm going to grow more. And it ended up unlocking something in you in this development growth, learning a new area piece for you. This factor. And then the like practicality of like, how do I schedule in an hour a week into my schedule first and foremost? Then how do I get, once I get to a certain point of like, oh yeah, the people that are around me, like this is really easy to like schedule practically. But then there's people that I want to have conversations with that like they live really busy, full lives and they're not close by.
Right.
Or our schedules just don't mesh well. And so the feeling of like, man, I'm hitting a wall. Am I going to be able to continue doing this? Am I really going to get past month 3? Am I really going to get past month 7? Like, because of filling in conversations at the right timing.
Right.
Totally. Like, I have all these people that I can have conversations with, but like
coordinating it all.
Coordinating and logistics. And so just for watching the pursuit of you of going like, I'm not going to stop. Or then like my expectation was I was going to have a conversation with this person. And then you got a conversation or it allowed you the opportunity to pursue somebody else. You're like, maybe I wasn't thinking about this person. And then you're like, whoa, like just the way that the Lord you use that term forever, like the rekindling romance.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like that the Lord reminds you of experiences and encounters in the way somebody impacted your life in a micro moment or a large moment that you got to relive and share. It's been like for you, right?
Yeah.
Just so cool. And then for so many people, like there's that other world of things. Like I did not expect at the beginning of the year for this to be such an impactful journey and project for so many other people.
Yeah.
Like that these conversations would be something that would so intentionally, the Lord would so use to like intentionally meet people where they're at in brokenness, in hopelessness, in frustrations, or just like encouragement that they're like, whoa, I did not expect that this conversation, listening to this would like change something in me or light up something in me or teach me something or give me a new perspective that I never thought of. And so I did not anticipate and expect that it would be such an impactful thing, which I'm sure you, in the way you think, are like, oh yes, this is totally going to impact people. But I was like, this is really going to be a cool journey for you, and did not think, man, this is going to be powerful for people.
Yeah.
On the receiving end, the listening end, not in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely has, I think far out exceeded what I thought it could do. And it was, it kind of did. It morphed along the way. I had this idea and didn't know how it was going to be accomplishable or if it was even possible, but have also had some incredible help and support along the way. And,
yes.
I mean, massive shout out to Andy Irwin, who's taken footage and stuff every week and put it together and helped make it happen, because at the beginning of this whole thing, and he was, he had an episode on here back in the beginning of this because of the impact of just watching him in that season, and our gym guys with the gym that we've been working out with, and that I haven't in a while, by the way. So I should acknowledge that we still have a long journey to continue to walk, but people that have just been a part to make it happen.
Yeah.
People that have said yes, and when somebody else had canceled, and I had my list of people to go to next, and just, is there any way you can make it happen so we could continue this? Just all of the different parts to that. But I definitely didn't think it was gonna be as well received by so many people from far and wide. Like, I mean, I got people that have reached out that I didn't even realize were still connected to anything that I was doing in life, from previous seasons, that were like, I so loved this episode, or it was so cool for this. And so that's been really cool. And I think for me, part of this too is yeah, I definitely did not think that this was going to change me as much as it did.
Yeah.
To get to have these conversations and really help walk out even or share pieces of these people's journeys in the short time of conversation that we would have. And then I recognized about halfway through how much each conversation had this little flavor of just divine sovereignty. That even if no one listened,
yep,
that this was for me and them. And to remind them of, in a lot of the conversations, something that God had done in them or through them at one point, whether a long time ago or recent, that impacted me and made a difference. I watched even through, the screen at times, people, you could see and feel the Lord working in those moments to like almost rekindle something in them or reignite or remind them of like, man, I'm still doing something or I have more. And that's really where everything turned. If I never got a big guest in the future or whatever, something that I was like kind of dreaming big for, it was like, this is about really the guests.
Yep.
Along this journey, even more than it's about the people listening to the conversations. I just did not see that coming until really like about halfway through. And it's been such a beautiful gift for me to get to have as well. I think as I step into this next season, of life going into 2024, I recognize that there's still so much growth and transformation God wants to do. And I've talked about it a few times on the podcast up to this point, but 2022 was the most difficult year of my life, different seasons and places. And as I've walked out this podcast journey, I've been writing a book as well, that is close to being done. I'm anticipating it being my goal. My kind of target release time is going to be spring of 2024. I'm hoping around April to make it all happen. And man, it just as I've gotten closer to finishing it along this journey and really unpacking the last 18 months of my life throughout the book, which is, this is the name of it in case people didn't know. It's called Freed Up to Build Up, because part of this whole journey has been God helping me really get freed up from the things holding me back so he could build up who I was made to be. And that's been part of what every episode has been walking out with other people. But I have never been as vulnerable and transparent and honest in my life as I have in this book, and share really for the first time in a place that can be publicly received. The journey in a little bit more depth of what I really walked through and how God did what he did and how I believe he wants to do things in other people as well. And so that's been something that I'm both equally like really nervous about and excited about, because it's true to who I am and who we are and I believe who God's called us to be. But I was rereading through the intro in chapter 1 the other day and recognized like this is definitely gonna have to go to a few different pre-readers before just in case I'm crazy, which I probably am, but I'm so excited to share that message and that journey with people more in this next season. And for those that were a part of the 52 project, so much of those moments along the way helped impact and encourage and keep me even pressing into that journey of finishing this book. And I'm just so excited to get it into people's hands and heads and hearts, really, because I know that there's so much that God wants to do still in people's lives that they might have just pushed eject button on or become hopeless in, whether it's getting freed up from something that they just can't push through or get past, or really stepping into the fullness of the next thing God's called them to do or who he's called them to be. And my journey of getting freed up to build up is a lot like a lot of people's journeys. But so man, pray for me as I finish this thing. For those that are listening that have been a part of this journey of supporting a podcast, thank you. I've got one more episode next week, and can't wait to share more. I'm going to talk next week more about what I really am excited to step into after the 52 project, what 2024 has for this podcast, and beyond the book, and so much that I think God's continuing to reveal. I'm excited to take the month of January off and rest.
Yep.
Rest in the presence of the Lord. Really lay that first month of 2024 at His feet, surrender, pray, fast, and seek Him, and just go, I'm going to be really slow in this month with you before jumping back into podcast stuff or whatever. But there's going to be some really cool things, I think. I'm excited to press into for 2024. But you, the support and belief and championing that you've given me along this year. Well, I mean, since the end of 2022, the whole opening of my book talks about the beginning of this with us. And from that moment till now, about a year, like none of what God has done or is doing through me would have been possible had it not been for the way that you received me in a really broken place and walked with me in the healing and rehabilitation period of that, with such a faithful, grace-filled love, unconditional love. And so thank you.
Yeah,
because in January earlier this year when we talked, I could say things like that, but just not the same depth I can now from this year. And just there's so much still on your life, babe, that I would say, as I listened to you preach recently, and I just sat here and listened to you talk today, that man, you are an impactor so much larger than you realize. Like your words have so much weight, and your journey is going to just open up more of an opportunity to impact people because of how real you've been and are continuing to step into being. Your loyalty and commitment to Jesus is so challenging and attractive. Like I just find myself so attracted to you in so many ways, all the time. It's crazy. It's too much, honestly. We talked about this. Like it's like I need you. I need you to not be as attractive as you are. Don't do that. Obviously, you're not. Keep being. But you're inside and out so beautiful and so strong and wise and just beyond my wildest dreams of what I prayed and hoped I'd have as a spouse. And I can genuinely, not to say that because it's a public podcast and like, oh, cool. Yeah. Like what I've watched the Lord do in you and us in this last year has only reinforced that, and that continuing to grow in the next season of our marriage. So thanks for being with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you. And yeah, here's the end of 2023 going into 2024. See what the Lord has. Everybody listening, thanks for joining us. Until next time, see ya.